Welcome back to LA Fishguys Aquarium Tech Talk, APEX installation at Jim's house. So we've got most of the system installed, obviously not completely set up, but it's installed. Almost ready to start programming it. Next items of business is to start taking advantage of the versatile breakout box. And as you recall, I have my own breakout box, but this is the Neptune breakout box here. And this is where we connect things like float switches for automatic top-offs. These float switches, or some of these float switches that we're going to install, they're going to be part of our fail-safe and alarm system, so that if for some reason Jim's water level is too high or too low, he gets email notification. But also we'll have a pair of float switches in there to handle the top-off, so that when his sump level fluctuates from evaporation, water will automatically be replaced with our ODI water. So the components that we're going to be using, we have our float switches. As I said, these are the Reef Tank float switches from Premium Aquatics. They're the one source I know online that sells them, and they're terrific float switches. And what I like is they've got the little tiny headphone jack-like connections on them. But they're very well made, high quality. They come with these little brackets, and the switches actually will pop on and off these little brackets here, like so. So if you ever do need to replace a float switch, and I will add that it's always a good idea to have extras. These are nice because they pop on and off the brackets. And what I like to do is, you want to be able to adjust your sump level from time to time. If you're, well, not from time to time, but for protein skimmers, for example, a protein skimmer is very sensitive to water level, and being able to fine-tune the water level in your sump is a very good means of fine-tuning your protein skimmer. If the water level is too high, the protein skimmers will tend to overflow and be very sensitive. If the water level is too low, they won't produce foam or skim mate that's high enough in the skimmer neck to really export the dissolved organics. So having adjustable sump level can be very helpful. So what I like to do is mount my float switches to magnet scrubbers. And so what I've done is these little brackets that come with these float switches, I've epoxied them to these cheap, inexpensive little magnet scrubbers. Yeah, these are the scrubbers that you would use to clean the tank, and on the wet side I've attached little mounts for the float switches. These here are both set at the same height, so these float switches here are going to be used for the ATO on and off. I have redundant float switches here so that both will need to turn on in order to activate the ATO, and it's done basically for redundancy. I'll also point out that with quality float switches like these, or the Madison ones that I mentioned earlier, you can actually change them. In this case, right now, they are in the closed position when the float is up there in the open position. And you can change it from normally open to normally closed simply by removing a little clip on the bottom of these switches, like so. Pop that clip off, and you can take the float off and reverse it and change the polarity of the float switch. So that's kind of nifty. Cheap floats tend to prematurely fail. I mentioned earlier, water will intrude in the water connection there and cause them to fail. And they also have a little bit less play in there, so they're more sensitive to calcium, will tend to stick more. I've run these same float switches now for 5 years. I don't really ever clean my float switches. I've never had a float switch failure, nor have I ever had a float switch stick. So, again, first items of business for our ATO will be to connect our float switches, or set our float switches up in here. So we're going to do that now. These are our ATO floats. Tangled mess of wires here. Out of the way. Probably ought to be using a zip tie, but these will be far out of the water, shouldn't be a problem. We'll take our little magnet, and we're going to set this in the sump in an area that Jim won't be bumping it. And see if we want to change our sump level. All we gotta do is raise our magnets up or down. So right there, Jim, I'm assuming you like your sump level where you're at, right? Is that a good level for your skimmer?
At the low end.
At the low end, would you like your water level higher?
A little bit.
Okay, and we can adjust them up a tad. Doesn't take much. These float switches are sensitive enough that they will stay nice and accurate. We have our little splitter here. I'll plug that in like so. So we got 2 into 1. Route this back there, like so. And we're going to plug this into our breakout box, into switch 1 here on our breakout box. I've gone ahead and labeled everything. Route that up there and plug it in right like that. Now, next up will be our high level and low level float switches. Notice I've got these staggered on here, and that is so that we have a high level warning point and a low level warning point. Couldn't know if they were, one was water was too high or too low if they're both at the same level. When we mount these in here, we're going to want to set these so that the low level is lower than where these are, and the high level is obviously higher than where those are. I'm going to get this thing out of the way here so we have a little bit more room for a second set of floats. Of course, I went ahead and labeled these on the ends of the wire, and hopefully I don't have to pull them back off again. Let's see, low, low, high, high. Alright, so I've labeled them so that I know what's what. We're going to just go ahead and mount these floats. Oh, I guess we could do them in the back there maybe?
You can move that digital thermometer if you want.
Yeah, I guess we could put them right here in the front. Oops. And so this one here, our low, we want to make sure that it's below that level and the high is above the level. Drop these ones there, low and high. Now, I use, as I said, little headphone jacks, and Breakout box, is handling some of our fail-safes, and one thing we want to know, if the Breakout box became disconnected, for example, there is a chance of like top off or something turning on depending on the polarity of your switches. So I also use my a fail-safe for my Breakout boxes. Breakout box has 6 I/O ports, and one of those ports, I'll take a headphone jack like this, and I soldered it so that this port is always closed. Now what I'll do is I'll plug that in, and I'm going to stick that into switch 6 here, and I'm going to have a little program in there that tells me that if that switch for whatever reason becomes open, that means that my breakout box was disconnected from the Apex, and I'll have an alarm there and it says basically breakout box unplugged, so that, you know, the only way that port would ever become open is if for some reason the connection between our breakout box and the Apex became disconnected. So just a little fail safe that I add in there, breakout box unplugged, by using one of the ports on there. And you can do the same thing with this breakout box. All you got to do is, you know, run a ground or a wire between one of the ports and the ground and create a program in there that says if switch 6 open, then on, or, you know, BOB unplugged. So we've got everything wired up here on the breakout box. The next step is going to be to set up Jim's ATO pump, and for that we're going to run a line from his RODI holding tank across his garage to this pump. This pump is a liter meter slave pump. These pumps are dynamite pumps. They are damn near bulletproof, require very little maintenance. They're nice and slow. Some people use larger power heads and stuff like that for their ATOs. I'm of the mindset that with an ATO, you want a slow pump so that if for some reason your ATO sticks on, things don't happen in a hurry. With a power head or a larger pump, you can flood your system with fresh water in a hurry. With a slow pump like this that pumps gallon an hour as opposed to gallons a minute, you could, you know, this thing can run for quite a while before there's a problem. And we'll have float switches in here that if the water gets too high, it's going to shut the outlet for this off anyways. If the water gets too high, Jim's going to get a notification, and Jim at some point down the line is going to add an APEX PM2 with salinity monitoring, so that if for some reason his salinity drops too much, he's going to get a notification as well. So there's a number of things that we can use as preventive measures to keep us from diluting our salt water too much, but a slow ATO pump is important, and also using a good reliable ATO pump is important, which is why we chose a liter meter pump from Spectra Pure. Unlike most of the other liter meters, this particular pump uses an AC adapter, and we're going to plug that AC adapter into our Apex, and our Apex, when the water level changes based on the float switch, it will turn this pump on and off. So next step is going to be to at least prepare to have this ATO pump plugged in. This pump is going to be in the garage. These are a little bit on the noisy side, so I've opted to mount this pump in the garage so it's something he doesn't hear in here. I already know which switch we're plugging it into on the Apex, so I'm going to get that prepared. Someplace around here I've got this little power extension, which actually I don't even need. Number 4 is going to be our ATO. Plug that in there. I'm going to route this wire out into the garage. We'll plug into our pump. So, next step is going to be to go into our garage and start preparing to get the ATO set up. One other thing I can do while I'm in here, though, is get the ATO line from here, which I'm going to plug in. I'm going to attach this right here into our little probe holder. I'm going to route this line out through the wall there, through our little chase hole, and also into the garage so it's ready to connect to our pump. All right, so stay with us as we go and finish getting Jim's ATO all set up.
some point, there comes a time in everyone's professional career where they must move forward. They must embrace that next leap of technology. I've been building and maintaining aquariums for 31 years, and I've always shied away from the latest gadgets, the newest lights, those high-tech fancy controller systems. I didn't get on board initially because I knew they were not long-term field tested. But even later, I still avoided these controllers and monitors because they seemed overly complex, and no surprise, I'm the furthest thing from a techie kind of guy. After now being introduced to the APEX system by Scott, I realized that 2016 was the year for me to have my electric moment. So what changed? Neptune Systems has been creating aquarium monitoring and controlling systems for nearly 18 years. So they've been around for a long time. But over the last few years, they snuck up on me and created a system to monitor your aquarium from anywhere in the world and control all the devices without having to be an electrical engineer. Okay, so you've got my attention now. The system is called APEX, and the cloud-based software it comes with is called APEX Fusion. APEX Fusion is the recent improvement that has made it so super simple. Using the step-by-step Get Started guide, the APEX was easy to install and get connected up to their APEX Fusion cloud-based control. In only a matter of minutes, I got the basics going and could monitor all the tank's vital signs: temperature, pH, ORP, salinity, water levels, leaks, and tons more from anywhere in the world. It'll even send me text messages. That 24/7 monitoring is key because it's the insurance policy against the top failures that will destroy not only your livestock, but your ultimate enjoyment of the aquarium hobby as well. If that alone was not enough, the APEX is the Swiss Army knife for your tank. It can control many different aspects of the aquarium that often require many discrete pieces of equipment. This can save tons of money, from pump control to dawn to dusk dimming of lights to dosing control. It does it all. My revelation for 2016? I think the APEX is a key component of a successful aquarium. And remember, if I say it's easy to set up and use, that says it all. Premium Aquatics wants to bring you the highest quality aquarium products and livestock available at reasonable prices and to provide you with honest, non-biased information on their entire product line. Their goal is customer satisfaction, and they want your return business. That's premiumaquatics.com. One of the best things about going with an APEX is that you become one of the tens of thousands of other owners that love helping each other out. Maybe you get stuck, or maybe you just want to simply take on a new DIY project. Whatever your question is, the Neptune Systems Community Forum brings all of those thousands of users together to help you answer it. Many of the things discussed in this video series are also covered there in various posts. Or add your own question and start the conversation. That's forums.neptunesystems.com.
Okay, so we run our ATO line. This is Jim's RODI tank, and what I've done, rounded the line into there, and then I've got the end of the line weighted through this piece of PVC. I got a little John Guest push lock fitting that I screwed into this piece of PVC and dropped that down into the sump, or into his RODI tank, and if you look down in there, that keeps the RODI ATO line at the bottom. Otherwise, that quarter-inch tubing will kind of float around and wouldn't stay at the bottom, and Jimmy uses a lot of water. He'll transfer water over to his mixing tank, and that'll make sure that that ATO line stays at the bottom of his RODI tank, even when he drains it down. So this line is run through the PVC line here, the same PVC line that we happen to use for his RODI filter that's over there as well. So we've got this line run through PVC all the way across his garage. Up here across his rafters. And then down to our ATO pump. I've mounted the ATO pump securely on the wall there. Again, this pump is not the quietest pump. I didn't really want it in the fish room. You're just better off out here. Last step is to connect this tubing to the input on this SpectraPure pump, and I'll just get that in there a little ways. These pumps are very, very low maintenance. Every handful of months, Jim will want to unscrew this from the wall, screw this little back cover off, and there's 3 rollers in there that you clean with some rubbing alcohol. Clean them good because they'll get a little bit of black gunk on them. And maybe once a year he can replace the tubing on this. And just to be safe, I'm going to grab a little zip tie. Put that zip tie on here like so. The white tubing here goes into his sump. Plugged in. The ATO pump is plugged into our APEX. This is a low power consumption pump. When you're using low power consumption pumps like dosing pumps and stuff with the APEX, there's 8 outlets on the APEX. 2 of those outlets are relay outlets. The other 6 outlets are triacs. Triac is an electronic relay outlet, but a triac outlet requires a little bit more voltage heavy or power heavy devices. So a very low wattage device on a triac, like a dosing pump for example on a triac, the outlet may not switch on and off properly. So low power consumption devices you want to plug into the relay outlets. On the APEX, those outlets on the EV8s are outlets 4 and outlets 8 are the relay outlets. So we have this plugged into outlet 4 on our EV8. Outlet 8, which is also a relay outlet, is going to be the outlets that we use for his hog algae scrubber LED lights. Those also are low power consumption devices. We'll want them on a relay outlet, and as such I'll plug them into outlet 8 on the EV8. That way we can turn off and on the algae scrubber lights at specified intervals. We'll run those lights opposite of the display lights. They'll probably run 18 hours a day, but it's always a good idea to have a little bit of off time with an algae scrubber. Is that correct, Jim? So we'll run those opposite of the display lights so that at night, typically when the lights go out, that's when we see the lowest pH levels in our tank. That's when our pH levels will drop the most. And during the day when the lights are on, when things are photosynthesizing, they're generating oxygen, and that oxygen raises the pH. So the idea when you're running things like algae scrubbers or refugiums, you really ideally want those lights to turn on when the display lights come off so that you have minimal impact on the pH in your tank. So in the case of the algae scrubber, his hogs, we're going to run those lights mostly opposite of the display tank, and we'll get into that setup when we start doing the programming, which is really ultimately I think one of the next items of business. The next thing we're going to go in and do right now is we're going to plug in his pump and other devices into our outlets. And then we're going to dive into actual programming and electronic setup of the APEX as far as putting the APEX to use. Alright, so we've got the ATO all set up. What I want to do now is just check our pump. I've got the ATO pump plugged into outlet 8, which is the relay outlet. I'm going to log in here to his APEX, go into the dashboard here, and turn 33 ATO. I'm going to turn that to on, and if you believe I hear the pump running, let's see if I got air bubbles coming out here, which I do. We've got it all hooked up right. So pump is running right now, and I'm just going to suck all the air out of the line there. Other nice thing about this particular style ATO pump, particular liter meters, some peristaltic pumps have dual rollers. And with a dual roller peristaltic, certain dual roller ones, like the cheaper cheaper ones. They have a tendency to, from time to time, have a little bit of a siphon going, so water could actually drip past the rollers. In the case of this particular pump, it's a 3-roller system, so you'll never have an issue where any siphoning occurs. So it's just something to take into consideration. If you use a cheaper pump like an Aquamatic or some of those BRS dosers, a normally closed solenoid is a good thing to also use in conjunction with your ATO pump to prevent any kind of siphoning. But this pump, again, not an issue, but just something to take into consideration. So we're just sitting here waiting. It's pushing air through there right now, slowly, as it's purging the air out of the line and sucking water. That particular pump will damn near suck water around the block. It is self-priming, and here we go. It's pulled water through. So top off pump is working. Next thing to do is to shut that pump off, turn it back to auto mode. It is off. Plug it back into its permanent location. There's a little thing there. And throw it in the water where it belongs. I'll wedge this guy in here. All right, so that concludes the ATO pump installation and float switch installation. Stay tuned for the next part as we dive into actually programming and setting up all the gadgets and peripherals that we've added to Jim's APEX, and we'll keep moving forward. Look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.